The next speaker is Tejashwini Havannavar. And there was another speaker, Charuta Kulkarni. Is Charuta here?
Hello, we have joined from the same device.
Oh.
I am
Okay.
with Tejashwini.
Okay, all right. Charuta has been working as an assistant professor of philosophy at Ramanarian Rura Autonomous College in Mumbai for the last 2 years. She has a background in life sciences. Charuta's area of interest include philosophy of mind, philosophy of consciousness, and Indian philosophy. Tejashwini has been working as an assistant professor of philosophy at Ramanarian Rua Autonomous College in Mumbai for the last 2 years. She is also a logic-based consultant and has been practicing for 3 years. Today, their topic will be analyzing narcissistic personality traits through the LBT framework. Thank you.
Thank you for this kind introduction. Good morning to everyone, all the scholars and practitioners of philosophy. I hope you all are able to hear me.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So since we both wanted to explore narcissism, we primarily studied the traits of a narcissistic person. So that is our main agenda to work on this paper. We want to highlight a fact here that in recent years, there has been a significant rise in psychological awareness globally. People have become more attuned to their own habits, behaviors, emotions, their likes, dislikes, more broadly, the components of their personalities. In increasing this self-awareness, one also can draw attention to certain undesirable behaviors in others, shedding a light on malfunctioning personality traits. Among these, narcissism has emerged as one of the most researched areas in psychology, in sociology, and other related disciplines. For the purpose of this study, we consider narcissism as a collective term referring to personality traits like grandiosity, a strong need for admiration, lack of empathy, entitlement, selfishness, disagreeability, stonewalling, exploitative tendencies, and dominant behavior. While these traits also align with the criteria of narcissistic personality disorder as outlined in LBT, as outlined in the DSM criteria, this paper does not focus on the clinical diagnosis of NPD. Instead, we explore how individuals exhibit these traits without necessarily meeting the clinical threshold of NPD, and it can still they can still face interpersonal difficulties. A key aspect of narcissistic personality traits is their impact on relationships, whether within the family or romantic partnerships or professional settings. Manipulative tendencies may lead narcissistic individuals to treat others as mere means to their own ends rather than recognizing their internal value. An exaggerated sense of self-worth can leave the significant other feel neglected and very inferior. For example, a wife may experience emotional distress due to a husband's constant blame shifting, or a child may grow up feeling very inadequate if a mother prioritizes her own admiration and needs over the child's emotional demands. In maybe professional environments, a narcissistic trait can make teamwork very challenging, or sudden episodes of stonewalling and silent treatment, especially after a consistent positive reinforcement. It can lead a colleague to feel to question on their own self-worth and abilities. Researchers suggest that narcissistic traits can be partially innate, but are also predominantly shaped by environmental influences. And of course, with the upbringing, one of the defining aspects of narcissistic thinking is its intrinsic fallaciousness. These individuals often follow irrational thought patterns that make navigating relationships very difficult. Their inability to acknowledge deep seated insecurities foster a rigid belief system that resists self reflection and personal growth. To address these patterns, our paper employs logic based therapy framework to analyze narcissistic personality traits. LBT enables a structured understanding of how these thought processes function by identifying the underlying emotions uh, driving them, refuting the irrational syllogism, applying guiding virtues, and offering an antidote to counter the narcissistic tendencies. So, this philosophical approach not only aids in understanding the personality traits, but it also leads to navigating through relationship conflicts and provide a way, a pathway to mitigate their negative impact.
So I would be now focusing on how the LBT framework can actually help make a narcissistic individual aware of their traits, which are becoming a hurdle and challenging in their interpersonal relationships. As we have seen, tendencies like entitlement, selfishness, grandiosity, and disagreeability are a few behavioral and emotional problems that a narcissistic individual has. So, through the LBT framework, we can identify their fallacious reasoning, suggesting them guiding virtues, and help them get rid of their irrational thinking patterns through uplifting philosophies. The first step here is to identify the emotion of a narcissistic individual, which is anger. It is through research, it suggests that narcissistic individuals are deeply insecure human beings through which they project that insecurity in a very grand fashion. So here we are going to see that how a narcissistic individual commits fallacies. So the two major fallacies that we are going to work on is world revolves around me thinking and manipulation. World revolves around me thinking. A narcissistic individual would make any conversation that is inevitably going to end up being about themselves. They might give a benefit of doubt to other individuals, but would conclude by making sure that they are the center stage and they have taken the attention all about themselves. Narcissists want to be the center of the story or be the story themselves. They will make conversations about them. They feel that they are highly unique and genuinely special. Now, every human being is special in their own way, but for a narcissist, they possess abilities that no one has. They feel like they are better than no one else. So, because all of these traits do signify that they are committing the fallacy of world revolves around me thinking, that is one of the major fallacies that we are going to focus on. Now, world revolves around me thinking, just to give a bit of explanation as to what this philosophy is. It is the egocentric predicament of human beings where they feel like they are the they are the only individuals who have a say in everything, and whatever they say is the absolute best or the only best that exists. The other trait that they do impose with world revolves around me thinking is they force an individual to do a certain task or do certain things in a particular manner. So there are forced musts and shoulds that they commit while they are having a conversation or whenever they are trying to have a command or a direction over someone. So to just give an example, I have framed a syllogism here. If I want the report to be ready by tomorrow, then so must you. I want the report to be ready by tomorrow, so you must keep the report ready by tomorrow, come what may. So, in this example, we are seeing that there is a narcissistic individual who is expecting that there is a certain deadline that needs to be met, irrespective of whatever conditions the other person, the subordinate, is. Here we can actually give them the guiding virtue that is empathy. The guiding virtue for world revolves around me thinking is empathy. we can actually imbibe the virtues of being sensitive towards other beings and also being sensitive towards oneself. Like I mentioned just earlier, where narcissistic individuals, because they are highly insecure about themselves, they also don't show any kind of empathy towards themselves. And because they cannot show empathy towards themselves, they also fail to be empathetic towards other beings. So this guiding virtue would actually uplift them into making them believe that we are all people who need other people as well. There can at no point be that, I'm the only person who will do something and I don't require people. End of the day, because we are social beings, I think empathy becomes one of the major guiding virtue for a narcissistic individual to practice. Here, I would like to give two antidotes. The one is from Aristotle, treat others as you would treat your friend. And another is from the yoga philosophy, that is Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, and Upeksha, which means friendship, compassion, joy, and also being indifferent to the wrongdoer. So these are a few antidotes that we would, be employing toward a narcissistic individual. The second fallacy that we are going to focus on is manipulation. Now, because narcissistic individuals consider that they can get work done or they can only have relationships when they can deceive people, when they can lie, when they can threaten or harm someone. So they feel like their work can only be done only if they deceive, threaten, or harm other individuals. They do not even attempt to consider that there could be another way. There could be a more rational approach to hear other people and also get things done. So they do treat people as a mere means rather than an end in itself. They objectify human beings by making people as means of some outcome. So they do look at other individuals as just a mere means to bring some outcome from them. They are more consequence and outcome oriented rather than treating individuals as people who have their own set of beliefs, opinions, and experiences that they come from. They use force, intimidation, they frighten, deceive, or manipulate individuals to undertake any task. They also treat others as non autonomous beings because they consider that only they are the autonomous individual there, and they consider they put themselves into a high regard where they consider other people to be low or incapable of doing anything. Again, a syllogism that I would want to present is, if you want X, then you will have to get Y done for me. So they would threaten or manipulate to get that X thing done. So I would manipulate to get X done until that Y is done for me. So here we see that how manipulation is the only way they would actually have a conversation or even want to build any kind of relationship. Here, the guiding virtue for manipulation is empowerment of others. We can actually help a narcissistic individual to make them realize that you don't need to demean or push someone down to get your work done. Rather, you can actually empower an individual, consider an individual to have their own set of beliefs of some kind of importance. We are all rational beings and everyone has the capacity to contribute to something, and that is what empowerment would enable them to do so. Here, the antidote that naturally follows is Kant, where he says that treat people as not mere means, but as an ends in themselves. So to treat people not because I'm going to get something out of this person, but because this person has the capability and caliber to perform a certain task in certain way, or because this person is associated to me just like I am associated to this person, to just treat this person as a human individual and not as an object to bring in some certain outcome. Another philosophy that we would propose is Jaina philosophy, that is Anekantavada. Anekantavada basically says that there are many sided realities to a particular thing. So there are many ways in which we can actually work on a particular thing, and it need not necessarily be that whatever I say is the perfect thing, because we all know that when we have to carry out a certain task, or even in a relationship, if that relationship needs to be worked, there are more than two individuals involved in it, and consideration of all is very much important.
So with the systematic approach, as we go further, we feel it is very important to highlight the scope and limitations of our study. As stated earlier, this paper does not address individuals with clinically diagnosed conditions. However, initially it can be very challenging to differentiate between personality traits and NPD, like as a clinically diagnosable condition. Furthermore, individuals exhibiting these traits often refuse to acknowledge or accept the possibility of having it in them, and which again makes the diagnosis very difficult. Logic-based therapy can actually help to unravel the implicit patterns behind the judgments and provide a structured approach to addressing them. And it can greatly help to repair their relationship with their own selves and also with others. It is vividly observable through prior researches done that individuals in such relationships can greatly adopt to thinking patterns which are very illogical, irrational, as an impact of this narcissistic behavior. This can impair their reasoning processes, causing them to operate from a induced state of diminished self-perception, persistent self-doubt, a compromised sense of self, and also creating extreme dependency and validation. We want to propose that LBT can serve as an effective technique for those experiencing these psychological effects, aiding in restoring their rational faculties and helping them to sustain a fully functional state. We aim to extend this research further by focusing on individuals navigating these relational dynamics and offering LBT as a structured framework in the coming future. So therefore, our study proposes that LBT itself can serve as a very effective tool for identifying and addressing the narcissistic personality traits. And by offering this systematic approach to understand these traits, along with a structured plan of action, we believe that the negative consequences of such tendencies on social interactions can be reduced. So our goal here is to bridge the gap between psychology and philosophy, using rational analysis to help individuals navigate their relationships more effectively, that can bring in a healthier interpersonal dynamic. So with this, we conclude, and we both are extremely honored to present our paper in front of all the experts and dignitaries. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for
Thank
this
you very
opportunity.
much. We are open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. It's very interesting. I'm going to open it up now for questions. I do have one, but I'll let someone else start.
I'd like to say congratulations for the presentation and for daring to take such a hard subject, I would say, because in terms of philosophical counseling, I think, and in therapy in general, the hardest person to work with is the person who doesn't want to work with themselves and who thinks that they're too good to work with themselves. So there will be complete resistance. My question is if you have looked into various philosophies that could work for approaching a narcissistic person apart from LBT, which is a kind of therapy, I think. But what about some philosophies? I was thinking with you as you presented what other philosophies might work. So have you considered that?
Apart from philosophical counseling or apart from the setup of LBT, as I very briefly mentioned in my address, that it is very difficult for such a person involving all these traits together. It is very difficult for them to accept that there is something maybe not functioning well in them. So maybe taking them to the therapy is a task, and one should not do that. It should come from within as a reasoned choice. So, apart from LBT or other techniques, prominently CBT, because it is a behavioral side which is very depicted and it is very noticeable through their behaviors. So, CBT can help, but again, as I said, it is like for a narcissist would never on its own go to a session. And even if it is even if it is coming out of some personal agendas, so, to use some prominent psychological words here, another thing is gaslighting. So, it can be for them another tactic to manipulate. So, my therapist said that I won't talk to you. My therapist said that I need more admiration. My therapist said that you should behave in this particular manner to me. So, it can be they can take it very in a different way. So I guess impact of other techniques, impact of any therapy would be, I mean, it would be very difficult to work on that in general.
Yeah,
I
you
hope I
said
answered.
you said something at the beginning that made me think your perspective is start from impact of the narcissistic behavior in relationships. It's as if the people who are impacted by the narcissistic behaviors will ask for some help, but not the narcissist itself. So if they are not going to go and ask for help, I was wondering if it makes sense to offer something like Socratic questioning so that they get their own insight, like because with Socrates, whatever you think, it comes from yourself. So it's not somebody teaching you or telling you you're wrong. They just learn from you. So maybe the narcissist would be positively feeling about someone trying to learn from them, like Socrates tried to learn from his interlocutors. But my question is, would that be ethical? Because it sounds manipulative in a way. Yeah, I'm gonna go and do this thing with the narcissist against his will. What do you think on that?
I also believe that, like she already mentioned, that there will be resistance to take help, but what we have read so far is there would be some individuals in their lives, in a narcissistic person's life, where that insecurity, the insecurity that we are speaking of, has already been shed, right? That could be either a friend or a spouse or someone that they consider to be reliable, someone who is also enforcing their narcissistic traits, but also has the ability to tell them that, you are being the problematic person, like not directly in this language, but making them realize that, because of these behaviors of yours, there has been some kind of turmoil in the environment. So if there are individuals in their lives that they can make them reflect, someone where they don't feel threatened, because again, like for a narcissistic individual, they do feel threatened the moment you make them feel accountable. That's the reason I'm saying that there has to be someone in their life who has the capacity to help them to be accountable and at least acknowledge that, okay, maybe I might be doing something that is going wrong around me.
I wanted to just mention a kind of clarification, and that's that LBT provides a framework within which to work with clients, and it admits all different types of philosophies. So when asking, can you use a different philosophy than LBT, it's sort of like a category mistake, because you can use any philosophy you want, with LBT, as long as it doesn't violate the cardinal fallacies, and it's internally consistent. And one thing that seems reasonable, although there needs to be more empirical work done on it, is that the types of philosophies that individuals who have inclinations towards narcissism, and there is a DSM classification that's not, it's not not others. It's called other specified personality disorders, and it's a classification where the client doesn't meet all the criteria, of the narcissistic personality disorder. And even for those clients, the types of philosophies that seem reasonable are ones that are not so much like Kant, but more like Hobbes, more like Ayn Rand. That somehow, if you're not nice to people, they're going to screw you. And therefore, you should be nice to people. And they did studies too, with one individual who was not given that kind of instruction, and another who was, and then they looked at domestic violence, and they were asked to think to themselves. One group was asked to think to themselves, how would you feel if you were in that that abused individual's position? And the one the group that was given that instruction really sort of resonated with its being wrong. See, so the idea here is that if, as long as it's somehow what's in it for me, how would I feel? What would happen if it was me? Is that kind of, development of so-called empathy is possible. So that you're able, it appears, to kind of create an almost kind of, it's almost like a contradiction, a kind of a self-interested empathy, where that seems to be the most feasible route, in working with that particular population. So, what you're saying, I think, is correct, but I'm wondering, if Kant would be the right guy, to use on somebody who has, tendencies towards narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes, so it was a great insight, and we also got a different perspective to look at our presentation as well. So along with, I guess we both would completely agree with you that Kant would be a little, uh, how can I say it, a little difficult to convey as an antidote to such a person. But along with that, maybe if we can, as we have mentioned through few examples from Indian philosophy, if we can also incorporate principles like Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, which is you can extend your sense of compassion. Initially, maybe starting from a very small level, maybe increasing it minute by minute. And of course, as you said, by maybe imagining yourself in such a situation.
Mhm.
So maybe working through the principles offered by or in Indian philosophy, it can be, remolded in that way.
Sounds feasible. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sam, I think you're on mute.
There is a comment in the chat. If you'd like to read it for you. Let's see. From Radha, just a comment, appreciate antidotes to challenging narcissism and bridging the gap. Okay, it's a nice comment. Very good. We still have some time for more questions.
I'd like to bring to attention this narcissistic issue as approached by the people from Australia, from Masterson Institute, who are very good at working with narcissism, and they assume it's a sensitivity that the person has around esteem and intimacy. So they recommend neutrality, in meaning neither criticize nor admire, but just describe something like I understand you're trying to get this and you're doing this in order to get it, and then the result is you don't get it. So a different approach might make sense, wouldn't it? And then he starts to think very pragmatically in the sense of gaining things through another route, but it requires from the people that they are working with that they are very clear on their boundaries, that they don't exaggerate, that they don't bring their own pleasures and interests in front. Don't admire, don't criticize, just describe. I wonder if there is anything in LBT that connects with that kind of neutrality, if there's a name for it.
Well, I think that that's consistent with what I was talking about, actually, because it's means end. It's
Okay,
the
means
causal
end.
and causal connection here between certain behavior and getting what you want, and ultimately, that's what they're looking for. They're not thinking in terms of regard for other individuals for its own sake, but rather what's in it for me. And so, if you go around insulting people, they're not gonna do something good for you. And so you need to be nice to them so that you get what you want. And and that's why you're having relation problems. See, and so it's kind of almost programming a computer to, I guess, to respond in a certain way. I mean, some studies have shown that there's some individuals who don't even have, the insular cortex is the part of the brain that is largely responsible for having empathy. And when they've done studies, they found that there's some individuals, nothing's registering there. It's just like this brain damage. And so if you're trying to, instill empathy in somebody that doesn't have the hardware, to do it, then it's pretty hard. On the other hand, though, if you try, the kinds of things that you're talking about, and I guess I'm talking about too, the means end kind of approach, that seems to be a reasonable, and that's been, there's some evidence to suggest that does work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We have some time. More questions?
Not sure if this is a proper question, but I would be very curious about the experience that the presenters have had with dealing with narcissistic, because I think if they chose this topic, they have been impacted and handled it in a way. So I'd be really curious about that.
Okay. So yeah, like you said, the topic was chosen out of experience. And I have experienced in my previous workplace, so that made me realize. And like you said, I don't know if there was any kind of sustenance to what happened, but the impact was really high because somewhere your self-esteem gets affected. So that's what we are planning to do in the next paper. We want to work on the impact on the victims of narcissistic abuse, where there is some sort of there is at a great extent there is so much micromanaging, gaslighting, and also expecting you to do things where that expectation has no bounds, and which just makes you feel like a small person, which is their agenda, because it's like they want to make sure that they are at the center stage, and they are the ones who are marking everything, and they make the others feel like they are not capable of doing anything. So that was one thing. Another thing is constant humiliation to whatever work is being done. So it's not about how you're doing the work or what is the work being done. It's more about you're not doing the work according to me, which I don't think at any point two people can work in the same fashion, right? Like if we both have been given the same task by the head of the department, we both would be functioning in a very different way. But as far as the work is being done, that should be it. But for a narcissistic individual, it is more about you should have done you should have done the task according to me, which puts you into a challenge where you feel like, okay, so am I not an autonomous individual? Am I not a person who has some kind of mind of my own where I would like to do tasks in my own manner? So, like I said, they do treat you like an non-autonomous individual where they feel like you lack creativity, you lack your rational mind, which does impact you in a manner where you start questioning. So the existential crisis was really rampant while I was working there, because it constantly made me feel like, okay, maybe I'm not good at it. Maybe I'm not good at teaching. Maybe I'm really bringing some kind of problems and making the students suffer because of my inability. So it went to an extent where it affected largely the professional life. And like we say that it's never the one area of life that is targeted. It also affected other areas of life where whenever I shared an idea or an opinion to even my friends or in my relationships, it always bounced back as a reinforcing idea where I question that, okay, am I being dumb enough to, like, express this particular thing, or am I not capable enough to, express this particular thing, which also made me feel like, if I'm really so small, am I even worthy to be in this profession? Which I think is the worst thing to make someone feel. And also to go through all of it, and to, like, if you would ask me that, if I have overcome those, what do you say, that kind of an abuse, I would say not fully, because what happens to you stays with you for a long period of time. So touch wood, and by God's grace and with whatever healing that has happened, today I might not question myself so often. But if at some point while doing some task, if there is some kind of error, a human error that happens, or there is something that is not executed in the manner that was expected to be executed, I do rile myself into thinking that, maybe I'm really not worthy, and maybe how that person treated me was really true. So the effect of it is long lasting, but it's again on an individual to work on it again, like rewire yourself and not make it. I always say this, that, once what has happened with you in the past need not, like, determine your future or determine who you are as an individual, which is a long process, but of course something that can be achieved. Yeah.
Can I just quickly add a question here?
Yes.
My question is an extension to what Anka has said. And Tejaswini, thank you so much for sharing this experience. But I would like to ask you how exactly, while you were overcoming this entire situation, how did you employ LBT techniques? And how did it help you in this whole process to come out of the impact?
Okay, so LBT technique came a little later to me, because once, like, while I was emotionally so flooded, I couldn't think of much. Like, there was no rational thinking happening whatsoever, if I'm being honest. I constantly kept questioning my own self. Only after I left that space physically, I started to actually think that, because I also come from a philosophy background and logic has been a part of our learning and teaching, I actually used the syllogisms that she would, like, impose me with, and ask myself that what fallacies were being committed, and what fallacies am I committing by listening to someone else. So, like I said, at no point I can actually fulfill another person's idea of an expectation to be fulfilled as a task. Like I gave an example, right? So I started to understand that this has got nothing to do with me personally, because in the name of constructive criticism, if you are negatively attacking a person, that is no criticism at any point. It has got more to do with understanding that this person is demanding perfection. This person is also trying to manipulate me into making me feel like, you're a small person, like, and you are someone who is incapable. So it came at a very later stage. And at this point, when I, like, hold myself accountable, when I'm questioning myself, if something goes wrong and I keep telling myself that, oh, in the last workplace also this had happened, and I think maybe I'm really not worth it. That is when LBT has actually helped me to logically rewire the things that have happened and not associate from one experience in the past to the other experience in the present and the future. Another thing that has happened is the last step is my favorite step in LBT, that is exercising willpower. Because irrespective of following all the steps, we are humans and it's very difficult to like always practice those things. But willpower, where it nudges you, it pushes you into making you believe that you know what, you are capable, and you need to go on doing those 6 steps again and again. But the 7th step actually is the pillar in which it helps you to practice the logic-based therapy framework in a much more structured and a rational mindset. Because it can so happen that I can bounce back. I can go back into thinking that yes, I am maybe not worthy or I am not capable. But I have to keep telling myself that who told you all of this, and what are the expectations that you are holding to yourself? Are these expectations of others, or are these expectations of yourself? So in this manner, like, logically, rationally, breaking down everything and then exercising my willpower to keep breaking them down into a logical and rational approach is definitely exhausting and consuming. But that's what the impact is so high that it does take time. But then once it becomes a habit and a practice, I think I and we are all good to go if we've been a part of narcissistic abuse. Yes.
And just to continue with her point, as I have mentioned that we really want to take this research ahead by, like, the part 2 would be focusing on the victims, focusing on how to rebuild their thinking, which is maybe prior to that abuse, they may be same thinkers, but after that it kind of degraded their thought patterns a lot. So offering a very rational framework will be more useful to those individuals. And Anka, thank you for really correctly pointing it out that it does come partly from our personal experiences. So her is with some other sphere. Mine was with dissolving a relationship. So gladly that I was able to receive a therapeutic feedback that helped us to add some objective points into the paper, and it will be surely very helpful to also take it to the, as I said, to the part 2 of this paper. And thank you, Himani ma'am, for also asking the question.
Well, we have a few minutes left.
I would like to add a few ideas about interacting with a narcissistic person, and when we observe that they manage to trigger in us some sensitive points. I think that we can also be in the self-work or when we are working on a client, when we observe such a problem, correct our boundary condition or the client's boundary condition regarding that specific vulnerability. Because if we take ourselves like an electromagnetic charge, and a different charge can do harm to us, then it's clear that we can work on ourselves to set some more correct boundaries and we should be even thankful for a narcissistic person when it's been pointed out certain vulnerabilities in our interaction with the outside.
Yes, I would actually agree. More than appreciate, I think you just have this sense of understanding that, okay, this was inside me, and like these were the things that would trouble me in a person. So, yes, and like in Indian philosophy, we always say, have gratitude for people who have come and walked out of your life, because these people have taught you so much that no book, no teacher, nobody can teach you. It's the experiences. So I actually agree with what you like just now said. Thank you.
And
All right.
the hardest part I found in setting these boundaries, when you find out that certain friends, certain you even maybe consider them family members, constantly they were using you in certain games. And when once you say, hey, okay, let's be real friends, or let's not do this to me, and you trace a new boundary condition, and they are keep on playing with you in the old game, and you are already neutral, because you already see that they are clearly attacking your or trespassing that boundary, what you just redraw. And then when you are firm on keeping those newly set boundaries, they just disappear from your life, and it's hard for you to understand that you were used, and that this is the hardest part. So when you realize that for years, or for maybe a whole life, you were part of a game. It's an unfair game, but once you realize it, and when you manage to grow and grow out from that situation, I think that's you're never gonna get into a game where you are just an object and you are not a subject. And that's the teaching in even when it happens to you, or when a client is coming and having a problem, an issue with this boundary condition.
Absolutely. Very agreeable.
All right. Thank you so much